Have you ever felt tired, even without doing anything that demanding? As if your mind never really shuts off. As if something is constantly pulling your attention, draining your energy, leaving you restless, without fully understanding why. And the strangest part is that this has started to feel normal. But what if this exhaustion isn't just physical or emotional? What if something deeper is happening inside you, something you haven't fully noticed yet? In this video, you're going to understand why your mind always feels overloaded. What's really behind this constant mental drain, and how it's affecting your decisions, your peace, and even the way you connect with God. This isn't just about being tired. It's about influence, direction, and what is silently shaping your thoughts every single day. If you want to regain clarity, peace, and control over your own mind, then you need to stay until the end. Because when you understand what's draining you, you finally begin to recover what was being lost without you even realizing it. Before we begin, there's something important you need to know. This video was created with the help of artificial intelligence tools, not to replace truth, but to organize, clarify, and make visible what is often already happening inside you, but hasn't yet been named. The goal here is not to give you more information, but to give you understanding. Because when you finally understand what's happening inside your mind, you stop fighting symptoms and start seeing the root. And that's exactly why what you're about to hear can completely change the way you see your own exhaustion. There is something you need to face with clarity from the very beginning. This constant exhaustion you feel is not normal, and more importantly, it doesn't come from where you think it does. Because most of the time, you look at your day, your routine, what you did, and you try to justify that fatigue based on physical effort or responsibilities, but deep down, something doesn't add up. You may have had a relatively light day, nothing too demanding, and still, by the end of it, your mind feels heavy, as if it's been used the entire time, as if it never had a single moment of real rest. And this creates a silent confusion, because you start feeling a kind of exhaustion you can't fully explain. The problem is that, over time, you get used to it. You begin to accept this feeling as part of life, as if it's just the way things are. But that normalization is exactly what keeps you stuck in this cycle, because you stop questioning and start simply enduring. In Proverbs 4:23 it is written above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And when this verse speaks about guarding your heart, it's not just talking about emotions, it's talking about your mind, your thoughts, what is constantly being formed within you. If the source of your life is what happens inside your mind, then the state of your mind defines the state of your life. And this is exactly where the problem begins. Because you may be trying to rest your body, but your mind never stops. Thoughts keep arising, associations keep forming, memories, concerns, stimuli. All of it remains active, even when you believe you're resting. And this creates a kind of exhaustion that isn't visible, but is constant. You're not just tired, you're mentally overloaded. And this overload doesn't come from a single source. It comes from a silent accumulation of things you don't even realize you're absorbing throughout the day. And the more this repeats, the harder it becomes to notice that something is wrong. Because what should be a signal turns into a pattern, and what becomes a pattern stops being questioned. But there is a very clear difference between living tired and living aligned. And until you understand where this exhaustion is really coming from, every attempt to fix it will be superficial, because you will keep trying to rest without realizing that the problem isn't the lack of rest, but the way your mind is being constantly activated. And this leads to something even deeper, something that is happening all the time without you noticing. And that is directly connected to how this exhaustion is being created inside you. Underscored, there is an idea that needs to be dismantled within you. The idea that exhaustion only comes from effort. Because if that were true, all you would need to do is stop, rest, slow down, and everything would return to normal. But you've already realized that it doesn't work that way. You can stop your body, but your mind keeps going. And this happens because what's exhausting you is not how much you do, but how much you are exposed to. All day to me, there is an invisible overload happening in your routine, a constant volume of stimuli information, images, thoughts that never truly stop. Even in the moments you call rest, your mind is still consuming something: a video, a conversation, social media, some form of distraction. And little by little, you lose the ability to simply be in silence. In Psalm 46:10 it is written, "Be still and know that I am God." Notice the instruction. Being still is not just about stopping physically. It's about becoming quiet internally. It's about creating a space where your mind is not constantly occupied, where real pause exists. But that space has practically disappeared because you've become used to filling every gap. Every free moment has turned into an opportunity to consume something, and what used to be silence has now become discomfort. You feel the need to always be listening to something, watching something, thinking about something, as if silence feels strange, as if it's not safe to remain there without stimulation. And that is a clear sign that your mind has lost its natural rhythm. The problem is that this excess doesn't feel heavy in the moment. It feels light, fragmented, almost unnoticeable. But throughout the day, it accumulates. And before you realize it, your mind is already full, saturated, without space for clarity. And a mind without space cannot organize thoughts. It cannot discern what truly matters. It cannot truly rest, because rest is not the absence of activity. It is the presence of silence. But you were not trained to live in silence. You were conditioned to live in constant stimulation. And that completely changes how your mind operates. You begin to confuse distraction with rest. But distraction does not restore. It only occupies. And as long as your mind is constantly being occupied, it never enters a state of recovery. And that explains why you end your day feeling tired, even without doing anything that demanding. Because the exhaustion didn't come from effort, it came from exposure. And until this is clearly understood, you will keep trying to solve the problem the wrong way. You'll try to rest more, when what you actually need is to reduce what is constantly entering your mind. And that opens the door to something even deeper. Because it's not just the excess that is affecting you. It's what this excess is doing to your ability to focus, and how your mind is being divided without you even noticing. Maybe you've already thought that your problem is a lack of focus, difficulty concentrating, or even a lack of discipline. But there's something more precise happening. You didn't lose your focus. Your mind was divided. And this division didn't happen suddenly. It wasn't from one day to the next. It was gradual, almost unnoticeable. Small stimuli throughout the day. Small distractions. Multiple sources of attention being activated at the same time. Until your mind started operating in a fragmented way, without you even realizing when it began. You start one thing, but you're already thinking about another. You try to concentrate, but your attention quickly drifts, even when you try to come back. Something pulls your mind away again, and this creates a constant feeling of instability, as if you're never fully present anywhere. And the most subtle part of all this is that you can still function. You keep working, responding, living, but internally, there's a fragmentation happening, as if your attention is always split in multiple directions at the same time. In Matthew 6:22 it is written, "If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." When Jesus speaks about the eyes, he's talking about direction, about focus, about what guides your attention and shapes how you perceive reality. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows, your life begins to take shape. The problem is that when your attention is divided, your energy is divided too. And that creates exhaustion, far more than you realize. Because your mind has to constantly switch directions, shift between stimuli, reorganize thoughts, restart mental processes over and over again. This process consumes mental energy, even when you're not aware of an unoverchimi. It creates a pattern where your mind can no longer sustain deep focus for very long. Everything starts to feel harder to maintain. Reading with calm, reflecting deeply, praying with presence, even thinking clearly becomes more difficult. Not because you've lost the ability, but because your mind has been trained not to stay in one place. And this begins to affect areas you don't even associate directly, Your decision-making becomes more confused. Your patience decreases. Your sense of what truly matters becomes distorted because a fragmented mind cannot organize priorities with clarity. You start living reactively instead of intentionally, responding to whatever appears, instead of choosing with awareness. And this creates a pattern where everything feels urgent, but nothing is truly deep, and without realizing it, your life begins to mirror your mind, fragmented, scattered, without a clear center, without sustained direction. But there is something even more important here. This didn't happen by accident. It wasn't just a lack of discipline or personal disorganization. There is a pattern being formed, a constant influence shaping how you think, how you react, how you perceive the world. Because as long as you believe the problem is just lack of focus, you will keep trying to fix it at the surface, forcing yourself to concentrate without realizing that the root is deeper, in the way your mind is constantly being exposed and shaped. And it's exactly this root that begins to reveal itself when you start paying closer attention, something that is shaping your mind every single day, silently, even when you don't notice it. Before we continue, if this content is making sense to you, consider subscribing to the channel, because here, you won't just find motivation, you'll find understanding, and understanding changes the way you live. There is something happening inside your mind right now, and maybe you've never stopped to observe it clearly. Your thoughts, the way you react, what you feel throughout the day, none of it arises completely on its own. There is a pattern being formed, a continuous flow of influences, experiences, content, stimuli, that little by little are shaping how you think, how you interpret reality, and how you make decisions. And the most important part, this is happening without you noticing. You wake up, start your day, come into contact with information, images, conversations, opinions, and throughout the hours, all of it gets absorbed, not consciously, but silently. And before you realize it, it's already influencing your internal state. In Romans 12:2 it is written, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Notice the depth of this. Transformation doesn't begin outside. It begins in the mind, and so does conformity. In other words, your mind is either being renewed, or it is being shaped by something external. And here is the point most people don't see. You are not neutral, not at any moment. Your mind is always being trained, always being directed, always being influenced by what you consume, by what you observe, by what you allow to remain within you. Repetitive thoughts are not just thoughts. They are the result of patterns. Constant emotions are not random. They are the reflection of an internal environment that is being built over time. And that environment doesn't form on its own. It is shaped every single day by the small things you allow in. The problem is that when this happens without awareness, you lose control of your direction because you begin to think, feel, react without knowing where it came from. And this creates a dangerous illusion, the illusion that you are in control, when in reality, you are being guided by patterns you haven't even identified yet. You start normalizing certain thoughts, certain worries, certain ways of seeing life, and overchimi this style like all, when in reality, it is just the result of accumulated influences. And that is exactly what makes this process so silent and so powerful, because what shapes your mind shapes your perception, and what shapes your perception shapes your decisions, and in the end, it shapes the direction of your life. But there is a way out, and it begins with awareness, with perception, with the ability to stop, observe, and recognize what is happening inside you. Because when you see the pattern, you are no longer automatically shaped by it. You gain the ability to choose, and that changes everything. But there is something even deeper here, because this exhaustion you feel is not just a side effect of this process. It is a signal interwarning, indicating that something inside you is out of alignment. And that is exactly what we need to understand now. Because as long as you treat the exhaustion as the problem, you will ignore what it is trying to reveal. There is a different way to look at this exhaustion you feel. And maybe you've never considered it before. What if, instead of being just a problem, this exhaustion is actually a signal, a silent warning, coming from within, showing that something is not functioning the way it should? Because the body can adapt, the mind can endure, but at some point, misalignment begins to surface, and it shows up exactly like this: as constant fatigue, as lack of clarity, as a weight you can't fully explain. The problem is that most people try to fix this in the most obvious way, by trying to do more, trying to get more organized, trying to rest more, or even trying to escape this discomfort through distraction. But the more you try to fix it at the surface, the more this exhaustion persists, because the root is not in how much you do, it's in how you are living internally. In Matthew 11:28 it is written, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Notice, Jesus is not speaking only about physical tiredness. He is speaking about an internal weight, something that goes beyond routine, beyond tasks, beyond what is visible. And that changes everything, because it means this exhaustion is not just wear and tear. It is an indication that something inside you needs to be realigned. It could be your rhythm. It could be the excess of stimuli. It could be the absence of silence. It could be the way your mind is being fed, or even the distance between you and what truly brings peace. And here is a very common mistake: trying to solve this exhaustion with more stimulation. You feel tired, so you look for something to distract you, to relieve it, to switch off, but that doesn't solve it. It only postpones it. There is a very clear difference between distraction and rest, and most people confuse the two. Distraction occupies the mind. Rest restores it. Distraction pulls your attention away from the problem. Rest addresses the root. And as long as you keep seeking relief through distraction, you will never experience real rest. This exhaustion is pointing to something deeper, a misalignment between how you are living and how your mind was designed to function. And that explains why nothing seems to fully resolve it, because you are trying to relieve a symptom without adjusting the source. But when you begin to see this exhaustion as a signal, something shifts. You stop fighting against it and start listening to what it's trying to reveal. You begin to notice patterns, habits, excesses, rhythms that previously went unnoticed. And that awareness is the first step toward real change. Because the goal is not just to stop feeling tired. It is to return to a state of alignment, where your mind is not overloaded, where there is space, where there is clarity, where there is peace. And that doesn't come from effort. It comes from adjustment. But there is still one final point that needs to be clear, because maybe you've already felt this. That sense that even when you try to rest, you never find complete rest. And that is not by accident. Underscore, if you pause for a moment and observe honestly, there is something inside you that already recognizes this way of living, this constantly active mind, this excess, this silent confusion. None of it feels natural, and it doesn't feel natural because it truly isn't. You may have gotten used to this state. You may have learned to function this way, but deep down there is a constant sense that something is out of place, as if your mind is always slightly beyond its limit, always slightly overloaded, and that doesn't happen by accident. In 1 Corinthians 14:33 it is written, "For God is not a God of confusion but of peace." This means that the natural state of a mind that is aligned is not confusion, not excess, not overload. It is peace, but peace here is not the absence of problems. It is internal order, it is clarity. It is a mind that is not being pulled in every direction at once. The problem is that you've adapted to a completely different pattern, a pattern where the mind never slows down, where something is always competing for your attention, where silence has become rare and excess has become normal. And the longer you live in this pattern, the harder it becomes that it is not normal, only habitual. There is a very important difference between what is common and what is healthy. And today, much of what is common is not healthy for your mind. You may be living in a rhythm that seems normal to the world, but is completely misaligned with the way your mind was created to function. And that explains why rest is never complete, because you try to rest, but you keep carrying the same mental pattern. You remain exposed to the same stimuli, feeding your mind in the same way. And so, Nothing really changes. You try to slow down, but the environment remains fast. You try to rest, but your mind remains active. You try to find peace, but you don't create space for it to exist. And this creates a cycle where you are always searching for something that never fully arrives. But when you understand that your mind was not designed to live in this state, something begins to shift within you. You stop accepting it as normal and start questioning it. And that questioning creates space for change, because the solution does not begin by doing more. It begins by reducing noise, reducing excess, reducing what is constantly occupying your mind without purpose. And little by little, as that space begins to emerge, something different appears. Clarity, lightness, a sense that your mind is finally returning to where it belongs. And this doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, small adjustments, small decisions, small pauses that, together, begin to rebuild the way your mind functions. And it is exactly at this point, when you begin to notice this movement, that something greater can happen. Because when your mind begins to align, your life begins to respond. After everything you've seen up to this point, there is a truth that begins to take shape more strongly within you. The problem was never just the exhaustion. The problem has always been what was behind it. Silent, constant, shaping your mind while you were simply trying to get through the day. And when you begin to see this clearly, something truly shifts, because you stop treating only the symptom and start adjusting the source. You stop fighting the effect and begin to understand the process. In Isaiah 26:3 it is written, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Notice this. Peace is not random. It's not something that appears only when everything around you is right. It is directly connected to internal alignment, to a mind that is steady, directed, grounded. This means peace is not something you find outside. It is something that manifests when your mind returns to the right place, when it is no longer being pulled in every direction and begins to be guided with intention. And that changes the way you live completely, because you begin to realize you don't have to stay in this constant state of overload. You don't have to accept this pattern as normal. You don't have to live with a mind that is always full, always tired, always scattered. You begin to see that what once felt inevitable can actually be adjusted. There is another way, a way where you become more intentional about what enters your mind, where you create space, where you allow silence without immediately trying to fill it, where you reduce excess and begin to align your attention with what truly matters. And this process doesn't happen through extremes. It happens through intention, small decisions, repeated consistently, small pauses throughout your day, moments where you choose not to consume anything, not to react immediately, but simply to be present. And little by little, your mind begins to respond. The confusion starts to fade. The excess loses its grip. The constant need for stimulation begins to weaken, and clarity, which once felt distant, starts to emerge naturally. And that constant feeling of exhaustion begins to give way to something different, something lighter, more organized, more stable. Not because everything around you changed, but because something within you started to align. And maybe most importantly, you begin to perceive the presence of God again with greater clarity, not as something forced, not as an effort, but as a result of an internal environment that is more open, more quiet, more available. Because it's not that God stopped speaking, it's that your mind was too full to notice. But when there is space, there is perception. When there is silence, there is direction. When there is less noise, there is more clarity. And when there is alignment, there is peace. And that is exactly what you begin to recover when you understand what has been happening all along and make the conscious decision to adjust the way you live internally. Before we finish, if this video brought clarity to you, if it helped you see something that wasn't visible before, then this is the kind of content that can continue helping you. Consider subscribing to the channel, because the goal here is not just to inform, it is to transform the way you live, think and decide. Now, before you go on with your day, do something simple but meaningful. Pause for a few seconds. Observe the state of your mind right now, without trying to fix anything, without trying to change anything. Just notice, and in silence, surrender it to God, because change doesn't begin with effort. It begins with awareness.